First is the table of contents. We have prepared a simple quiz about alien species. Let's take the quiz and see examples of damages to various alien species. Next, let's think about the debate about alien species in 3 perspectives and talk about solutions and conclusions. Before I started, I prepared a quiz. Here are 10 species. How many alien species are there? Yes, all 10 answers are alien species. Nutria, bullfrog, bass, etc. may have known you are an alien species. The creatures that are considered to be surprising are probably black goats on desert islands and magpies on Jeju Island. It is easy to understand if you know the exact definition of the alien species here. An alien species generally refers to a country of different origin, but it also means that organisms that have not existed outside the geographic habitat can enter and settle down for generations. In the case of uninhabited black goats and magpies of Jeju Island, they were originally creatures of the peninsula, but entering the islands away from the peninsula is alien species, which is out of geographical range. This means that magpies are not alien species in Gwangju, but in Jeju Island, magpies are alien species, which means that alien species may vary depending on the geographical point of view. Likewise, many of the creatures around us that were considered indigenous are alien species. So how many of these alien species are damaging to the ecosystem, disrupting the ecosystem? There are various cases of damage, but only 4 are representative. First, Nutria controls the spawning of native fish by destroying wetlands, while river snails compete with native species with vigorous fertility to destroy riversides. British grassland lands salt marshes to reduce biodiversity, including fish, and bullfrog destroys the balance of ecosystems with a strong appetite. We must fight off these alien species that are devastating to the ecosystem. But there are various debates about the alien species that we have to fight. We divided this into 3 categories. First, the ethical aspect. The fight against alien species is to kill them. We have looked at what this eradication project is and how to do it in ethical terms. The second is the possibility. We considered whether alien species might be concerned about ecosystems or not. Finally, it is about localization. Let me share with you our views on whether localization of alien species can happen. First, let's look at the ethical aspect. We have seen 2 examples. It's the fight against foreign fish and nutria through nutria sutures and electric shocks. In the case of nutria, the anus was tied to eat their offspring with mental stress and pain, and there was a claim to use this property to combat nutria. In the case of alien species fish, as shown in the picture on the left, the current flows through the electrode-attached boat and catches the foreign fish wriggling due to electric shock as shown in the picture on the right. This is actually the case in Kentucky. There have been people who are too unethical about this project, and some argue that it is inevitable even if it is unethical. First, those who consider unethical say that alien species have life. Respecting the minimum right to life, he must minimize the pain, such as neutralization and euthanasia. And criticize that human beings are the worst ecosystem disturbance species that need to be brought in when they are needed and left unmanaged because of low demand. On the other hand, people who argue that eradication is inevitable said that humans are more important than alien species. We can't reverse the situation where the ecosystem is now destroyed. In addition, he argued that there is no perfectly ethical way to combat it. The reason for this is that I interviewed the hunter in combating nutria. He said he initially caught a stick or golf club to fight nutria. But animal rights groups say it's animal abuse, and another alternative is to drown nutria. Isn't a club or golf club abusing animals and drowning? Here we agree with the claim that there is no ethical way to kill lives, and if it must be eliminated, we must respect the minimum right to life and treat it in a less painful way. Next, let's see if there is a possibility that ecosystem disturbance creature will necessarily affect the ecosystem. The first example of the possibility is Atlantic salmon farming. Recently, the Atlantic salmon farming was successfully completed by the Gwangju Environmental Agency. Controversy has been raised as to whether this affects ecosystem disturbances. First of all, let's hear the opinion that there is no possibility of disturbing the ecosystem. Atlantic salmon farming is already in place in many countries, including Norway, China, and the United States, and argues that agriculture can be the answer as salmon consumption increases. Aquaculture companies insist on building escape prevention facilities, special material networks, triple use, and monitoring systems, and Goziong, Gangneung and the East Sea. The possibility is that Atlantic salmon are aggressive, so they attack other species and damage the ecosystem. In other words, farming should not be done because individuals who escape can eat native species. Not only that, but because they may have new viruses and infectious diseases that are not yet adapted, they are cautious for the government. Aquaculture of Atlantic salmon is still a matter for further thought. Largemouth and bluegill were also brought into aquaculture and designated as ecosystem disturbances. Atlantic salmon are also examples of damage abroad. However, there is still a short period of time since the farming has been started. So many countries are challenging for economics. Korea has a view that such a view of the world that Atlantic salmon farming is possible. However, we think it's a matter that needs to be decided based on cases such as bigmouth bass and blue ball. We thought that Atlantic salmon could have disrupted ecosystems. Because we thought about why Atlantic salmon was designated as a concern, we thought that we would only consider the economics of Korea and miss the risks, and we would spend a lot of money on fighting it. As an example of another possibility, we looked at animal cafes. Among them, the Raccoon Cafe, which is a big hit recently, was considered the possibility of ecosystem disturbance. The biggest problem that can cause ecosystem disturbances in raccoon cafes is escape and disease transmission. We divided this view into the opinion that there is no possibility of ecosystem disturbance and there is possibility of ecosystem. First of all, the opinion that the raccoon cafe has no possibility of disturbing the ecosystem is that the animal cafe is regulated and the animals are well managed, so there is no need to worry about escape. Vaccination is well done and there are no real cases of disease infection through raccoon, which is overly framed. The first reason for the opinion that raccoon cafe may disrupt ecosystems is that the regulation of animal cafes includes only pets and endangered species. An amendment to the animal cafe was made in 2019, but it does not include wild animals that contain raccoons, which means that raccoon cafés will not be managed well. Secondly, raccoons have many diseases that can be transmitted to humans as well as animals. Rabies and raccoon roundworms are the most dangerous of them, and raccoon roundworms are known to have a very high mortality rate if children have them. However, when looking at the operation of the raccoon cafe, there were many places that did not contact with the disease as shown in the photo. If you come in contact with these individuals, you are very likely to spread the disease. What's more, animals raised in animal cafes can act as super spreaders because of extreme stress and reduced immunity. Super spreader refers to a host that is easy to infect, has a long-lasting infection, and has a long spread, and may cause greater damage later. In addition, raccoon cafes have recently become difficult to operate, and they have often been abandoned or managed to escape. Raccoons are said to be the second nutria because they have several offspring, and because there is no natural enemy in the country, the risk of disrupting ecosystems is high, experts say. Considering the basis of the previous two opinions, we thought that the animal cafe in Korea is not well regulated and there is a high risk of ecosystem disturbance. This time, I would like to know if there is a possibility that the alien species that have entered our country will adapt to the domestic ecosystem and become localized. In order for a species to assimilate into a new ecosystem, the first prey-predation relationship must be formed. Prey and predators are very important in ecosystems, and this relationship is essential for population control. No matter how many prey, if there are no predators, the population will grow exponentially and then gradually decrease due to lack of food. On the contrary, if there are few prey and many predators, the population will drop dramatically, leading to extinction. As such, relationships that can control populations in ecosystems are essential. So let's compare the most popular and well-known ecosystem disturbance species, nutria and bullfrog, from this point of view. Nutria has been in Korea for over 30 years, but it is known that there are no predators in the domestic ecosystem. Therefore, if left unattended in the ecosystem without any preparation, the population will be increased by eating all of them and the destruction of the ecosystem will be speeded up. But interestingly, there is only predator of nutria. It is human. In a broader ecosystem, humans are also at the top of the food chain. What is different from the normal prey-predatory relationship is that humans are indiscriminately combating for benefits of animals and plants. Nutria is no exception. People are eliminating nutria not only because it disrupts ecosystems, but because of the fact that bear bile is detected in the gallbladder, and that it is possible to benefit from a reward-paying scheme. It is not directly consumed, but it is reducing the population, so humans can be called the only natural enemy of nutria. But even if humans are natural enemies, the regulation of human behavior does not significantly affect population control within the ecosystem, because the amount is so small that it is insignificant. Therefore, nutria has no distinct predators in domestic ecosystems. We thought it was unlikely to be localized. Now let's see what a bullfrog looks like. Bullfrog has also been introduced to our country for over 30 years. Unlike nutria, bullfrog has now been shown to have several predators in Korea. In the early days of influx, predators are unfamiliar with bullfrogs and only recognize it as food after some time. In other words, the prey-predation relationship is now forming in our ecosystem and the population is being controlled. The following table shows the various predators of mammals, fish, birds, reptiles, insects, and so on. But if you look at this table, how does an insect catch a bullfrog? You might think that bullfrogs are unusually prey when they are eggs, tadpoles, and adult frogs. We'll check out in the next slide. Next, if you look at the food chain, the domestic meat-eating fish such as northern snakehead, catfish, and among the birds, the heron is the main predator. It was also found that when the bullfrog is an adult, it eats small snakes as the Elaphdionae and Natrix tigrina lateralis, whereas the larger sonk ate the young bullfrog. Next, bullfrogs are predators when they were tadpoles. Insects that would have been fed when they were a frog can become scary predators when they are tadpoles. Dragonfly larvae and saltworms reduce the number of tadpole populations by sucking and ingesting body fluids from eggs and tadpoles. As the predators were formed by dividing frogs and tadpoles, it seems that the bullfrog is not unconditionally destroying the ecosystem in the domestic ecosystem as before. But rather the predation-predation relationship is being controlled to some extent. As a result, bullfrogs are likely to be localized in the domestic ecosystem. This is the conclusion. We will present a way to prevent an ecosystem disturbance creature and harmful species in advance. Promotions to inform ecosystem jamming species, utilization of alien species. First, the Alien Species Registration System. The Alien Species Registration System registers all alien species in advance. If you fill out the application form for alien species registration as shown in the picture on the right, it can be helpful to punish the cause by grasping the manager and the management environment in advance to prevent it from being released into the ecosystem and quickly grasping it when it is released into the ecosystem. Second is the mandatory education of alien species. Have you ever attended school and took classes on alien species? Probably many of you are inexperienced and don't know much about alien species. So we thought that mandating education from school would help us to know and prevent alien life. In particular, it is a way to think about how to respond in advance by displaying detailed information about ecosystem disturbance creature among alien species. Third is the import ban. This graph shows the status of all alien species in Korea, and we can see that many alien species were introduced. Imports of species that did not investigate the possibility of destroying ecosystems in the past have affected ecosystem disturbances, and recently the law of October 2019 banned the import and export of alien species at risk. However, due to the small number of registered species and the absence of ordinary alien species, they are still considered incomplete. I believe that further investigation should increase the number of species and legislation after income. The fourth is the burden of the cause. This is not a natural inflow, but a regulation that can be enforced in the process of inflow through the supplier. Initially, when exporters and importers introduce species into the ecosystem that ecosystem disturbance creature, they must track the path of entry, find the cause and claim it. You can expect a preventive effect against potential risks. Fifth is the Adult Experience Program. According to the survey, there was very little ecosystem education for adults. Experience and education centered on children, programs for adults mainly carried out volunteer work. However, conducting an educational program for adults can help you engage more and learn more about project goals. So far we've been thinking about how to prevent the influx of alien species. Here we found a publicity activity that would raise awareness of alien species. We found 4 ways to promote it. First, supporters can look for news that informs the importance of protecting ecosystems and biodiversity, and can conduct ongoing publicity efforts to inform them of the dangers of ecosystem disturbances. The contest can not only promote ecological environment, but also make a big publicity effect by letting you think about it yourself. And the forum can be an opportunity to contact the information that was difficult to know by telling you from ecosystem disturbances to ecological pathways. Lastly, the catching of harmful alien species is effective in reducing the number of disturbance species in the ecosystem. Finally, thought about how to use alien species. There is a tremendous amount of budget and manpower currently being spent dealing with ecosystem disturbance creature. Catch and dispose of these numerous alien species wastes huge budgets and manpower. But not all alien species destroy ecosystems. Here are 2 examples of what you are actually using. First of all, 6 alien plants, such as black locust, ambrosia triphytha, and laxica cereala, have various effects in the treatment of antiviral and periodontitis. Next, Korean SME named Valleys made a pet nutritional supplement using base to make monthly sales of 20 million won. Base has higher protein and taurine content than salmon or Alaska pollock, so if you use it as a pet nutrition, you can solve social problems by consumption. This is not to leave the alien species as it is, but to make the most of it as much as possible. Obsolete ecosystem disturbance creatures should be caught and killed, of course, but I thought it would be wise to use as much as possible if they were useful. So far, we have learned everything about alien species. There has been a lot of debate about alien species, the opinion of eliminating them, the opinion that they will become localized. Both opinions have a point, but in our group, we thought that it was right to prevent a possibility because the problem that was caused when we entered the ecosystem was so big. Therefore, we think it is best to protect the healthy ecosystem by removing all the ecosystem disturbance creature in the ecosystem and promoting the contents to prevent them from entering them.